The connected one is the guide and us as leaders, we are guides and we lead through having connectedness. You have to understand where everyone is on their journey, and you have to make sure that your team is connected with one another. Hello, my friend, and welcome to this Friday episode of A Call to Leadership. I'm Dr. Nate Sala, your host. Every single Friday, we have a time where we just hang out, the two of us, and we go through one tool for your leadership tool belt. And so this is a new series we just launched last week. We're on week 2, and we are talking about teams. Very special. I don't know how many times I've spoken with and consulted with entrepreneurial teams that were epically failing. It really hinges not on just the team members. It hinges on us, the leaders. And so as I unfold this series, we're going to be talking a lot about the role of a leader in creating winning teams, the failures I've seen, but also the successes. So last week, if you hadn't listened to that episode on different kinds of leaders after you're done with this, I suggest you check it out. And so anyhow, we are on this one topic now, which is the team leader and how the team leader is responsible for creating an organization that's full of trust. In fact, trust is at the very foundation of leadership. It's the basis. And so we know it's important. We know it's got to be earned at times. Sometimes it's given, but we rarely talk about what trust is and how to define it. Well, I really like the definition in Merriam-Webster, which says that trust is an assurance. It's an assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. So it's a way that we have assurance. Not only that not only that, but we can have reliance on someone or something. It's the basis. It's the basis in our character and our ability and our strength and our truth. Not being false, not being a lie. Let's break that down a little bit more. Years ago, when I was researching on how to write my dissertation, I really had a number of different topics. One of the topics that came up was trust. I really thought, I need to write a dissertation on the value and importance of trust in leadership. Of course, I didn't end up writing about that. I ended up writing about visionary leadership behavior, visionary leadership theory, how visionary leaders actualize their leadership vision in entrepreneurial context. But in preparation for that, before I even got to my visionary leadership talk, I started to identify different aspects that I thought were essential to trust. And so I came up with a number of different aspects of what I thought were essential. And I believe that these are essential not only from a leader perspective, but also from a team perspective. And the greater level, I believe, how we exercise each of these conditions strengthens the level of trust in a team. And I'm going to go through these and talk a little bit about them one by one. And I'm also going to give some examples. And as I do this, I want you to think about your own teams. Whether they're in a business environment, perhaps a family, could be a sporting team, a community, could be a number of different ways that you describe what your team is. And so for the very first one of these, number one, the first aspect I believe is necessary for trust is clarity. Clarity of what? Clarity of purpose. Clarity that is communicating where we're going. How could I ever trust anyone to follow me if I don't know where I'm going, if I'm not clear on the destination? Now you can say, I'm not quite sure about how to get there. I need you, my team, to help me so we can get there together. That's different than saying, I have no idea where we're going because I can't follow you somewhere that I don't desire to go. So if you haven't heard me say this on other episodes, I'll say it here again. 2 questions that we must ask everyone we're following is, do you know where you're going? And do I want to go there? Those are very, very important questions. And it works in a family leadership environment. It works in a business. It works in politics. It works in all of these different dynamics. And so this aspect of trust is essential. Now, in a team, it works the same. If you're on a team and you're handling, let's just say you're handling sales and marketing, and another team member is handling operations, and you're not going in the same direction with the same desired outcome, with the same cause, with the same vision, then you're going to be going different directions. And you can't hope to trust one another to reach that same destination. I mean, I know it sounds elementary, but it's so critical that we start out with the vision and the clarity of our purpose, because it takes such great focus on both the big picture and the small details to maintain clarity, to plan, to strategize, to organize, to commit, to bring people who ultimately reach their desired destination. I found that even in my own family, I've diminished the trust of my wife at times because my clarity of purpose was not crystal clear. I had sometimes focused on the wrong things. In fact, when we were newlyweds, we would talk about this unity candle that we had. And you may have heard of it, you may have seen it. But when we were just getting married, we were at our wedding, and we had 2 candles, and then we brought them together, and we light one candle with the 2, and the 2 become one. And there would be times when we would be arguing, and let's just say my clarity of purpose, my direction in our marriage would be diminished. And my wife would give me a little reminder, and she'd say, "You're lighting your own candle." And that spark would remind me that my clarity of purpose was not in line with the clarity of our commitment in our marriage. Now, I'm talking about commitment. She really couldn't trust my decisions. She couldn't trust that at that moment, as a team, we could function cohesively with the kind of strength that we just described in the definition. So you must identify, is everyone on the team in a position to where we have clarity, a unified purpose in our cause, the tightest possible level of connection? Are we actually going to talk? And we're going to talk about connectedness too. Is that the case? If it's not, we're going to have problems. In fact, it's Patrick Lencioni who wrote the book, 5 Dysfunctions of Teams, said that the absence of trust was the most severe dysfunction. That a team could have that, the team could not have a cohesive bond or productivity or growth when we had a lack of trust. You spend all your time trying to protect yourself. And sometimes you undermine your other team members instead of having laser sharp vision and focus on reaching your collective goals together. That's the critical nature of having a trusting sense of purpose in your organization. Now, the second piece of this is, how do we even know, if we have clarity of purpose, that we can trust one another with our character? This is one of the aspects of trust that, your character defines you. It defines what you do, it defines your ethos, your ethics, your moral compass. Do you do the right thing with the right motives, with honesty, with humility, with integrity? Is your virtue uncorrupted? This second aspect of the trusting leadership, the trusting team, this aspect of character is essential. And if your answer is yes, that your virtue is uncorrupted, right? What about your team? Is your team honest? Is each member of your team upright? These are big issues, because if I can't count on the strength of your character, then who's to say that when you rationalize folly, when you have an incentive to backstab, when you have an opportunity to lie, cheat, that you won't? The strength of character is essential to having a trustworthy team, walking in an attitude of trust and integrity. And if you haven't heard me say this on other episodes, integrity is when you have a sense that that you are, not even just a sense, that you are undivided, that you're whole. And you've known people who don't have a strong character. You know people who do. Perhaps those who lie behind your back, those who are dishonest. I mean, your level of ethics and morality will determine the level where people are willing to trust you with assignments, with work that needs to be done. So you have to ask the question, do you have high ethical standards? Do you have principles? I may not agree with everyone, but if I know where they stand, I can trust how I will move forward. In fact, I can respect them. And because if you have weak character, then that's a problem. If you don't have the strength of character, you don't have trust or respect. So it's important to have a sense of character. In fact, character and competence, which is the next piece of trust, is what Stephen Covey said are the pillars of trustworthiness. And so what is competence? Competence is having the ability to perform. To perform what? That which you're called to do. That which you're committed to do. Competence is something that's a non-negotiable in trusting teams. One of the questions that comes up in my accounting and advisory firm with new clients is, how long have you been doing this, right? You think, why are they asking that question? Well, it's because they want to know that there's competence, because competence and experience go hand in hand. So if I've been working at this a year, it's different than 10 or 20 years, right? So sometimes I'll joke around and at least in the beginning of the relationship and pull their leg a bit. And I'll just say, well, this is my first week, but it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. I'll wing it. And then I'll give a little smile. And of course, then I'll say, I'm just kidding. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. And the comfort level increases dramatically. But having a strong level, if you will, of competence is not enough. It's not alone enough. You have to have good character alongside of it. You can't say, well, I'm really competent. I'm so competent that I have confidence that I know how to scam the IRS because I know all the loopholes. And even though all of this is illegal, I can get around it, right? You can't trust that person. You might say, oh no, Nate, that's exactly who I want. Well, no, you don't. Because what I tell clients also is that you won't look good in an orange jumpsuit, and I don't either. And so that's not the only reason to walk in good character, but it sure is certainly compelling. And, when we're talking about, and we'll talk about being compelling a little later. So your competence level will determine how trustworthy you are on a team, at least it's one aspect of it. And so how competent, how much of an ability does each member have on our team to do something? And the answer is, on a scale of a 1 to 10, if it's a 3, we need to pull that person out of a high challenge situation, out of that role, out of a situation where they're going to fail. And they're going to reduce the quality of the experience for all of our stakeholders. We have to be able to measure that. We have to be in a position as leaders to say, it's not just about one individual. Not even myself. It's about the mission. It's about the vision. It's about execution. It's about the experience. We have to point people to achieving that cause. And it's our responsibility to put the right people in the right seat at the right time. Or what Gino Wickman says in Traction, if they have what he called the GWC, they have to want it, they have to get it, and they have the capacity or capability to do it. Otherwise, they don't need to be in that seat. And it's our job. It's our role. It falls back on us. And sometimes it might be time for what we call a crucial conversation that says, I made an error. I put you in a spot where I'm going to set you up for failure because you may not have the competence. You may not even have the character to accomplish this mission. So here's what we need to do. I need to put you in a different position. Perhaps it's within the organization. Perhaps I need to move you into training. Perhaps it's not a fit at all. That's what it takes to be a leader. Because if you're on a team, let's call it a football team, and your goal is to reach the Super Bowl, and you put someone on as a wide receiver who can't catch, it's your mistake as a leader. You will not even make it to the Super Bowl. Because if you're throwing the ball, you might even come in last place. You're not going to win. So it's up to us to make sure that competence is there. And if it's not, we have to make a decision. So those are just 3 aspects. There's more. Another one, number 4, in leadership in teams, and sometimes people miss this one. It's so important. So important. It's connectedness. As leaders, we must have an entire organization, whether it's a company or a family or a community, where we implement what I call connectedness. And that's the ability to truly connect, and communication is a part of that. That's ability to be accessible. It's our attitude. Is our attitude negative? Is it always huffing? Is it complaining? Is it whining? Is it disconnected? Am I checked out? Are we relational? Do we hold sensitive matters in confidence, or are we gossipy around the office? All of these aspects are critical to know if we can be trusted, because the connected one is the guide and us as leaders, we are guides. And we lead through having connections. You have to understand where everyone is on their journey, and you have to make sure that your team is connected with one another. It's essential to trust. Or if you're isolated, people won't be able to trust you. If you're not communicating, people won't be able to trust you, right? And communication is an exchange. It's an exchange of ideas. Teaching my team to be communicators is critical to our success. And what do I mean by communication? It means that I'm able to teach them how to identify issues, right? Not just to talk for the sake of talking, but if there's a problem that needs to be discussed, we're open to doing that. If we can trust our team, we can trust that someone is connected because they're accessible and they're relational and they care about you. Then they'll welcome your constructive feedback because they know that you're not malicious, that your goal is for everyone to get that Super Bowl ring, to win. And you want to foster that relationship. You want to foster that environment. So ask yourself the question, how connected is my organization? How connected am I? That's leadership. I would say in some contexts, some say in some contexts leadership is top down, but it's really not. It's bottom up. And the bottom up is a servant leader who, instead of being at the top of this pyramid where the leader is at the very pinnacle and everybody else is just a subordinate or expendable, it's the other way around. Rather than being expendable, we are the leader at the bottom, nourishing. Imagine a tree. We're nourishing the branches, nourishing the roots of this leadership tree, this organization. And as the nourishment goes up, it goes into the branches, and then the branches bear good fruit for all to enjoy and to be nourished. Okay? So this is in the soil. Is the soil healthy? Is it connected soil? Because if it's not, your organization will suffer. It'll suffer. So make sure that we are connected in our organization, that we're able to communicate effectively without maliciousness, but that we can exchange ideas so that we can make this organization thrive as a team. Okay, the next one is charity. You think, what's charity? Do I have a heart of charity? Like, Nate, does this even belong in an organization to be charitable? Yes, absolutely. Because givers get. You gotta give to get. You can't just walk around and be a taker. And so when you are a cheerful giver, you will enlist the trust of others. And really, it's not just giving, but I would submit that it goes far beyond that. I would even submit that it's also sharing in the suffering of others in a way that compels them to take action. And so it's very different than compulsion. It's empathy, it's compassion, even altruism. Charity is having a concern for others. It's this real, genuine concern, this caring, this consideration. Perhaps it needs to be forgiveness, grace. Sometimes it shows up in vulnerability. This is the heart of what we're talking about for charity. Or what Maxwell said, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So charity in some ways is a willingness to serve without being served. Sometimes charity doesn't even have to take the form of something that's big. It can be, during tax season, for example, when I'm busy, I'll have maybe one of my team members will come into the office and sit down in a chair. And part of me is like, oh my goodness, I'm so busy. I don't know if I have time for this. I have so much to do. But I need to be here. I need to be fully present for my staff member, for my team member who's got some kind of a challenge right now they're facing. This happened very recently, actually. Somebody was in my office who was just having a tough time with the situation, and I wanted to make sure I was totally focused on what was going on. So I put the keyboard up, I moved the mouse out of the way, I gave full eye contact, I had undivided attention, and I was just there to listen and to talk through a challenge. That's charity. Guess what happened? Well, that individual then turned around and did the same for another person in the organization. You see, it's contagious. As leaders, it's contagious because we're feeding the organization, the culture, the values. So, when I see someone in my organization that doesn't walk in charity, or that doesn't desire to have, consider others, where am I missing it? You say, Nate, what if I've hired people on and I brought people to my organization that aren't like that? For me to influence them, for us to change, you have to ask the question: Do I just need to give up and let them go? Well, that's a tough answer. That's a tough question to answer. But I'm saying it like this: anyone can change. I've seen in my organization where people have changed. It takes time, but I've seen change that has really blossomed individuals. So you have to ask the question: does it hinder the experience that you're creating at every touch point? Does it hinder it in such a way that keeps you from honoring your commitment to all of your stakeholders? If the answer is yes, then you need to take a hard look at that and perhaps pull someone aside and have that conversation. But the answer is no, and you're able to work through it, then work through it. Help someone. But you cannot sacrifice the organization for any one person. You cannot, including yourself. So the next one is consistency. Organizations, teams without a sense of consistency will suffer. Consistency is what I would call steadfastness. It's steady when things are good and not so good. It sets a standard. It's responsive. It's honorable. It's dependable in our word and our deed, in our expectations. To have, I would think, discipline and direction can lead to consistency. It's a calmness under pressure. All of these aspects are being consistent. Oh boy, when people are inconsistent, when they say they're going to be somewhere and they're not, maybe they're on time half the time, maybe they're there sometimes, you think perhaps they're 50-50 or 80-20 or whatever it is, right? But I never have any idea whether they're going to be there or not, whether they're going to honor their word or not. You can't trust that. And in your organization cannot trust that. It cannot function in that. Your family cannot trust that. There was a time when I was coming home late at night, and I come home late often, especially during the busy times. But sometimes I'd tell my family that I would be home maybe around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. And if I was home at 7:30 or 8, it would be a problem because my words were not considered consistent with my actions. So I would start saying, I'm not sure what time. So I started saying, I'm not sure what time I'll be home, but it won't be past this time at the very latest. And if I came home earlier than that, I'm ahead of the game, right? But we set the expectation for what we're going to commit to. So, it's so important not to commit to things outside of what we can't achieve. And not only that, but our consistency is also related to how well we perform under pressure. Sometimes do you do okay, and sometimes you just melt down. We have to get that under control. We have to have the discipline so that when things are good and things are not so good, we set the standard for excellence. And that consistency is essential to our organization. So, in your company, if you've got someone who's coming in and they're supposed to be there at 9 a.m. and they're there at 9:15 every week, I think what is it said that 10 minutes early is 5 minutes late or something like that? Well, I'm a stickler for being on time, because what it is for me, it means that on time is to walk with honor and respect in the agreement that I've made. Think about it. Just like I'm not going to miss making payroll, right? Just like someone isn't going to miss agreeing being there when they say they're going to be there and consistently there. That's important. And it also is a part of what we set in our priorities, right? Now, are there some times when things happen that are beyond our control? Yeah, of course. But that's the exception rather than the norm. And that's when it can be acceptable. So if you're having struggles with maintaining your commitments, then take a hard look and find out what you're missing. Because the lack of consistency will lead to a lack of trust, and it will lead to a lack of performance. It will lead to a lack of getting into the end zone and that Super Bowl ring. Okay. All right. The next one is courage. You say, Nate, what does courage have to do with trustworthiness? Because there's difficult times we're all going to face in our organizations, in our communities, in our families, in our hearts. And we've got to demonstrate courage as leaders so that we can instill courage in our teams. Courage, by the way, is not the absence of fear. It's rather walking through fear to do what we're called to do and to do what's necessary. In fact, we get the word courage, at least part of it, from the Latin word for heart, to speak one's mind by telling one's heart. So when you say take heart, you know what I mean. It's to be courageous. So, when fear, doubt, when disbelief set in, what do? We act in bravery. We act in courage, because followers will draw strength from the leader who steps up in harsh conditions and stands in the face of certain risks. This is not only our responsibility, but it's at the epicenter of what we do when we face high challenge situations, when we engage rather than burn out. We commit, we stand in the gap, and we teach others to do the same. So when we're faced with the most highest of challenges, what are we looking for in a leader? We're looking for a courageous leader. We're looking for a leader who, when times are tough, when times are difficult, what do? I think of people in my own life. I think of people who stood firmly during this pandemic we had. I think of some of my own cousin who was faced with severe trials, really, in his retail business. Retail was just pretty much out, right? Had all kinds of issues. It looked bleak, but he wasn't going to give up. He was going to fight the good fight. He emerged, what I would think is victorious. And with his team by his side, he and each of his team members stepped up with courage. So it's invaluable. Be prepared. There's going to come time, if it hasn't already, and I'm sure for someone listening right now, you can specify a time where courage was necessary and it tested your resolve. Because in leadership, especially in the scholarship of a lot of research around the practice of resilience through courage is essential for success. So you have to walk in resilience, walk with courage. And when you will, you won't have to walk alone, by the way. Don't even try, because that's where isolation will creep in. Don't let yourself be isolated. Surround yourself with others who will help you, especially when you're weak, and your team will be greater for it. Man, have the courage that when you're on that 1 yard line, and we're using this football analogy, and I'm talking about your own 1 yard line, you've got 99 yards to go, you'll have the courage to keep pressing forward, yard by yard, inch by inch, till you're victorious. All right. The very last one I'm going to cover, and these are all essential for trustworthiness in a team, is conviction, or we could say commitment. It's a sense of certainty, confidence. The course we're taking, are we on the pathway where our competence, which requires resources, sometimes we need conviction to acquire resourcefulness, right? Where competence requires resources, conviction acquires more resourcefulness. You just don't know how much you'll need. So we're talking about this irrevocable tenacity. Conviction is what I would call passion in action. And when you're talking about conviction, you're talking about this: I will not stop. I mean, even until my last breath. There was a movie years ago called The Matrix. You might have heard about it or watched it. I love this movie. I've seen it, I don't know, maybe 100 times. So my wife would always tell me, you've watched it how many times now, especially in our first 5 years of marriage. It was my go-to movie. Anyway, I don't know why I watched it so much, but probably because there's so much symbolism in the movie. And I remember it was the third installment, I believe, and there was I wouldn't even recommend the fourth, by the way, just saying. So, but this is not a review podcast, but it was pretty dismal. Anyway, the third one was a part in the movie where one of the characters named Morpheus was talking about another character, Neo, who's the protagonist. And Neo had this insurmountable mission. And Morpheus was asked if Neo could accomplish his mission. And I'm paraphrasing, but Morpheus says something along the lines of, I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know this. While Neo has breath in his lungs, he will not stop. Man, That's conviction. While you have breath in your lungs, you will not stop. Are you the person who won't stop? Are you fully committed? Do you have that level of conviction? Do you have the passion in action? That irrevocable tenacity to win that becomes contagious in your teams. And you want people on your teams who share in that conviction. If they're not there, give them a reason to. Give them a worthy cause. Give them a sense of mission. Give them a sense of vision. Give them a sense of values. And watch as your team begins to become what a trustworthy team is. That's the very basis of a team. And that's not epically failing, but epically flourishing.